So if you ever pay attention to Florida news, right now, there is a realtor, actually two of them, that were arrested recently. And I'm not going to tell you the details. I'm not going to give you their names, but you can Google for yourself, scumbag realtor Florida. That's what the sheriff called them. So the basic gist of it is this couple, elderly couple, hired him to sell their house. In the process of him getting paperwork together, he allegedly, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
Let's say that. Allegedly made paperwork up for a power of attorney, for a medical power of attorney, and then he signed a DNR. And sure enough, they're in the hospital, and one of them, the plug was pulled. Now, all this stuff is alleged because he's not convicted yet. But what can you do to try to protect yourself or your loved ones for this? So today, again, we're with expert elder care attorney Scott Bloom, and we're going to try to unpack some of this stuff and hopefully give you some practical advice as to conversations you can have with your loved ones, because you can't force them into anything.
No, you can't force. Unfortunately, you can't force. You try and reason best you can. And the other part you do, if you have older loved ones, you try and pay attention. I mean, you want to have boundaries. You want to give people some independence, but as people get older, sometimes the judgments become a little skewed. And, you have to walk that fine line of overstepping and breaking those boundaries and protecting. And every case is different. Every case is different. I mean, you need to have the loved ones to make that work. Some people don't have anybody in these situations in Florida, which I'm not all that well versed with at this point. Maybe there wasn't any loved ones.
Yeah, right.
And unfortunately, at that point, that is a big risk, unfortunately, that we do have. I mean, every state has adult protective services agencies and those kind of things in place, but without any notice, they don't know to pay attention. And the court system seems to be a little bit more lenient in a lot of areas where we hear more and more of these people being taken advantage of when we thought we were tightening the restrictions, but it doesn't seem to be playing out that way, and I don't know why.
Right. And it's hard with I know with my parents around and with other, people close to their parents, they get a little stubborn. They
Yes.
they're independent. They want to remain independent. And I find it's hard to get them across to where it's okay, be independent, but you still it doesn't hurt for a second opinion. And when we help you a little bit.
Right. It's a difficult line. And we have that in here, with not every client, but there is that line. And unfortunately, there's no black letter rule on how to do it. There are some people that are very independent and believe they know everything. The kids, all I can suggest is, if it could be frustrating, don't walk away. Try and, look at it from the outside. Try and get the information you can without, violating confidences, without going overboard and breaking down those boundaries that, people need that independence, and as people get older, that loss of independence causes a lot of frustration. I see it all the time that, they are, you want them to be able to be independent, but you want them to be reasonable at the same time. And sometimes the reasonableness doesn't match at the same time you need them to. And some people never get to that reasonableness. I mean, I've had clients in their 90s that, don't realize they're in their 90s. There's old people out there. I mean, there's not many people older than them, but for them, they're not old.
By themselves.
Yeah, and that's it. And again, as long as they're not putting themselves or anyone else in harm's way, that's what you want to do. I mean, that's where there are adult protective services, and I have had clients where the kids weren't able to get through to their parents, and they felt that they were doing something wrong, and they called adult protective services to check up on the parent. And sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. Does it cause a rift between the parent and the child? Possibly.
Sometimes, yeah.
I mean, sometimes you have to risk that to protect the parent, and sometimes the parent will never understand. But it's a tough emotional time for people.
Really is.
It's a shame.
So does every town or municipality have adult protective services, or is it a national
It's
thing?
a county, well, county of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, where I work
Yeah.
out of is they have it. Every state, I don't know. I would hope Florida being a large, the large senior citizen, if that's the correct, politically correct wording. I don't know what it is anymore, but an older demographic, I would hope that they would have some of those things in place. But again, the limitation even for the government on that is that somebody has to call. This, it sounds like in the Florida situation, you had a realtor that took advantage of a situation that's unfortunate. I would hope that we had some more checks and balances. But what we end up having, unfortunately, in these situations are that the crime, if they are convicted of this crime, has to happen, and then they get convicted.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we're not able to put those precautions in place without the family member.
Right.
That sometimes can happen. Unfortunately. You get those situations where people want to be proactive and keep that crime from happening, but sometimes it has to happen for the justice system to work.
Apparently, this one came to light because his girlfriend heard a conversation between him and his partner. He had an alleged accomplice in this. She's actually charged as accomplice after the fact.
Okay.
So
she might not have called the police or something like that.
Right. And the girlfriend called. The partner was charged. The girlfriend called and said, "Yeah, something wrong here." They found that not only did he forge the powers of attorney and, the DNR, had them pull the plug, but he also forged a will, willing himself their home and 2 properties. This was $1.6 million.
That's, again, obviously committed a crime. If he's convicted of that, that's a crime of forging the stuff. We put stuff in place to try and protect against that. Mm-hmm. But on the other side, then you have to go, okay, well, how much should the court system or should the financial institution, the mortgage company, how far are they supposed to look into the power of attorney? If something is presented without, on the surface, looking like there's anything wrong, should the people have to jump through hoops? In this case, the normal reaction I see from people is like, yes, they should have done this, this, this. But I have that same situation where we have a legitimate power of attorney or a legitimate will. And the people are forced to jump through hoops because the financial institution or the court system is being what you would consider overprotective. So now what? Do we want it to be overprotective? Right. It's funny, as a society, we want it to be overprotective when we see these crimes happening, but when there is no crime happening, we don't want any overprotection. Right. It's kind of a double-edged sword, and it is. I don't know the answer to that. I would like to think that if we present a power of attorney, my client presents a power of attorney, they shouldn't have to jump through hoops. Right. But this is a situation where, okay, if they present a power of attorney and there's no reason for them to doubt it, then of course it's slid through. And I don't know how to solve that problem at all,
And we don't have Florida law because our territory is Pennsylvania and New Jersey. But here, correct me if I'm wrong, for a will, you need not only their signature, but 2 witnesses. Well,
no, that's a misnomer. You can have a will. You can draft your own will on a napkin if you want.
Right.
The issue then is the person presenting the will to the court will have to jump through a bunch of hoops to prove it's legitimate. So we want to make it self-proving. So we want to, meaning that it's on the paper, it's proven because we have 2 independent witnesses. We have a notary. That's for the court going, okay, look at all these things they went. We'll assume that this will is correct. Gotcha. But without that, it could still get through. A will could still get through, but you'd have to jump through more hoops to be able to prove it. Yeah, I've had some handwritten wills with no witnesses, or the witnesses was the named executor, so it wasn't an independent witness. So at that point, it really wasn't a witness. So then it was a point of, okay, how many people can we get to confirm that was the person's signature? And that is their writing. And so the more you can present, so it can possibly go through. But in the power of attorney, there are specific requirements in every state, and most of them are notarized 2 independent witnesses. Pennsylvania requires a acknowledgement on the front of the document. It's usually written out in bold print, in capital letters, that explains that I'm acknowledging that this is a serious document. And then on the end of it, there is the affidavit from the agent, the named agent, that says, I understand what I'm doing. I understand that I got to keep the finances separate. Mm-hmm. So Pennsylvania's made an attempt to do that. And I do that same thing for my clients in New Jersey. Florida might not have that. But in this situation, let's call it like it is. If they're going to forge those kind of things, they probably would have forged those too. So, without some kind of check, and I don't know what the kind of check would be. To be fair, I don't know how you get a check on something like that without making everybody jump through, giant hoops. You would think that if they went to an attorney and they did proper planning and they have proper documentation, they should be able to present it and not have an issue. Right. But in this situation, it seemed like they did. The only question was it was forged, but how would anybody know? I mean, somebody obviously found out. Somebody obviously found out, and then they can backtrack it. Mm-hmm. But my experience, limited experience in elder law, because I don't really deal with criminals all that often, is that they're very very competent in their crimes to some degree. If maybe if they used that intelligence for good rather than evil, right? Maybe they prosper more rather than the short-term gain. But it's a scary thing, it really is. I mean, so from my perspective, always, and again, it only works if there are family members involved. Sometimes I don't, there aren't family members involved. I know I get calls from facilities that we have a client here. They have no family. We need to file Medicaid for them. What are we supposed to do? It's okay when you need to call the ombudsman's office. You need to get somebody who needs to represent them. You maybe got to get a guardianship, over that person so somebody can be named as responsible party, because you don't want the facility being responsible for the person. That's a creditor. Yeah, right. And that's a bad thing. I mean, even if their intent is good, the perception is bad. Mm-hmm. And that's really a difficult thing in elder law side of it, is that, I want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but you do have unscrupulous people. And you got to kind of try and make it so that, everybody is protected. And it's a difficult thing. It is really a difficult thing for everybody. I think the more people that work together, if like when I have a case and I have a client needs to sell a home and you come in to do the home, there's an ability to communicate with a bunch of professionals that are looking out for the client. Yeah. Even if the family members aren't involved, but we can check that. We can catch you can catch, okay, this power of attorney doesn't seem to look right. Can you take a look at it? And maybe we can fix this and make sure how's the title companies feel about this. And there's a lot of those moving parts, but I think that there are people that do fall through the cracks that have no family members. But those of you that have older family members, it's important to find that fine line, get them professional help. I ask, people, they'll call me. A lot of times the kids will call me. Well, if mom or dad is independent, not, full-blown dementia, they can speak for themselves. I want to speak to them. Right. I want them to feel comfortable with me, because sometimes I find that they're not comfortable with their kids. Sometimes unreasonably not comfortable with their kid. Sometimes it's just the way they are. They still see their kid as a 5-year-old. I've had people, they'll talk to me and they'll listen to me about my financial advice, because the son doesn't know what he's talking about, yet the son's, president of bank. It's like, listen, he knows a little bit more than I do, and I'm exaggerating that, in these situations, but he just doesn't trust them. Dad doesn't trust him. Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, let's accomplish the goal. Let's make dad feel better and get us to where we have to get to. But everybody has to look out for dad. And it's a really tough situation. And I feel for people that are in those situations. Yeah. I think that people need to realize that it's not so simple to do it by themselves. Yeah. And they have to trust who they're dealing with. And the ones, that are the cheapest, not necessarily what you want to do in these kind of situations is, shopping price on your planning. Right. That's a scary thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I find people struggle with flipping the family dynamic from, the doctor told me that there's a time where your parents take care of you, where children are independent, parents are independent, And I don't know what I did with that 20 minutes.
Yep.
So that was basically
Yes.
the gist of it, because as soon as you're up on your own,
Yeah.
it's like a flash, all of a sudden your parents need help. And
Right. And I said, it's like the kids are the minors, then both are independent, and then the parents are the minors to a degree. To a degree. I mean, it really depends on the situation.
Yeah.
Not all 85-year-olds need to be treated like they're incompetent, because they're not.
Right. No, not at all.
I've had, I had a gentleman in here not too long ago that was in his 90s, late 90s. Physically, he was very limited, but mind was sharp as a tack. So, yes, he needs a lot of help. He needs help walking, he needs help dressing, he needs help bathing. His mind is smarter than most.
Right.
Yeah. So you walk that fine line. And the family, it's a shame. It's a shame. I think we see more of it, and we're going to continue to see more of it. People are living longer, and they're living longer sicker.
Yes.
They're living longer with disabilities.
Yes.
And it's tough. And everybody in the economies that we've been having, everybody's working or trying to work. So it's like, how are you at home? A lot of people in my age group, your age group, we grew up usually with one parent at home. Now the kids are growing up with no parents at home, and then same thing. Now you got the daughter working and husband working, and she's got 2 kids in college, and then she's trying to take care of her mom at the same time. Yeah. It's a difficult thing, because that's the one thing that you didn't really see as much growing up. Your parent took care of you, but they weren't taking care of their parent.
Until because
and even then we didn't see a lot of it. The life, people weren't living all that long, not compared to what they are now.
Yeah.
So we're seeing
20,
more.
25 years.
Yeah, it's a big difference. It's a big difference over the last 40 years or so. So it's a different system, and then unfortunately it leads to these kind of abuses and these kind of terrible people that take advantage. I mean, got to take care of your loved one. Again, I don't know how we fix it where there is no loved one to take care of. I guess we got to rely on the court system and the justice system, which obviously caught on to this one, and hope that people do the right thing. I want to say, I hate to say it. Listen, if you see you see something, say something. I get that, but at some degree, you also need to stay on other people's business.
You're right.
So where is that line? And I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. It's a difficult thing. So it's a great concept, but it depends on what we're talking about. You have a senior citizen, in the neighborhood, and they have no family. Can't tell people to get involved in someone's life. Maybe the person doesn't want any help. So it's a scary thing. A scary thing. I can't imagine, living late ages with no family and not having anybody close by. It's a shame for those people.
Now, you do have some materials like elder planning guides for people.
Yes. Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll put a link under this video, so you can get in touch with Scott, of course, ask him any questions. Pennsylvania and New Jersey are his territory. And we'll put a link to that resource for you. So if nothing else, print it and send it to your parents.
Yeah,
so we have a lot of kids that are they're not anywhere near their parents geographically.
Correct.
Which makes it tough.
Yeah, it does. So it's a point of trying, especially this time of year, holiday time of year, late years. You try and, a lot of times people see their family members, but you can only do so much, again, and that's the whole point. You can only do so much, but if you do feel that there's a problem, try and find out who's in their lives and who's around your family members. Kids that live in, Texas don't have to move back to Pennsylvania. It's not what it is. Your life is going to be your life, but you make the best effort you can. Again, with that fine line of trying not to overstep, and I don't know the answer to it because every family dynamic is different.
And there's no legal way to preemptively stop a parent from signing a.
That's the problem. Is that you're going to take away the rights? So all of a sudden we become 70 years old and now we don't have any rights. It's not fair. I mean, it's just not a good thing. So there's no black letter rule to how to do this. It's got to be case specific. But the best thing if you loved ones, pay attention. Pay attention without being overbearing. That's usually my experience has been that sometimes, and I even have said this to the kids over the years, is maybe if you weren't telling mom
Yeah.
what to
Yeah.
do and how to do it, that maybe you could have that communication. But, yes, she's acting like a little kid, but she's not a little kid. And she knows she's not a little kid. But
Right.
you're talking to her like she's a little kid. So you're just making the divide bigger.
She can dig her heels in.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. So even to the point where she'll cut off her nose to spite her face just to not listen to you when that's not
Right.
not what we're trying to accomplish here.
Right.
And if she is going to be that stubborn, maybe sometimes I've had clients in here that had made decisions that the kids didn't like,
Mm-hmm.
but they knew what they were doing and they weren't putting themselves in harm's way. They just weren't agreeing.
Right.
There's a difference, and that's the difference. I try and use the saying all the time. It's like, you can do whatever you want as long as you're not putting yourself or someone else in harm's way. And as adults, we're allowed to make what someone else would consider a dumb choice.
Right.
Nothing
legally preventing us from
No,
doing
not at all. I mean, I use example, people go to the casino. Well, I don't spend money in the casino anymore. But I did for a small period of time where, that was fun.
Tried it. It's fun.
Yeah, it was fun. A guy, had some fun with it, but I don't now. But somebody that does spend a lot of money, they're buying their entertainment.
Yeah.
They could turn around the same as me going, well, I don't understand why you're going on, a vacation.
Yeah.
I don't need to go away to have fun. There's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
Just a difference of opinion.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to have difference of opinions. And that's the thing. You don't want somebody to put themselves or someone else in harm's way.
Absolutely.
That's the biggest key.
So if you think something's happening with someone, well, first get the resource guide, get the elder planning guide, and wonderful information in there. But if you think something's happening to someone, even if it is a stranger, or especially if it's a relative, call the county.
Yeah, Office on Aging.
Office on Aging. Okay.
Yeah.
County
Yes.
Office on Aging.
Yeah, and then they put you in touch with Adult Protective Services if that's an issue, because you want them checked up on.
Yeah.
But again, it's a point of trying to have some kind of conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and taking even the younger generation to understand that it's not always about what you want.
Right.
Just because you don't agree with their decisions, if it's not harmful, it's just a difference of opinion.
Yeah.
That's not a problem.
Right.
If all of a sudden they have a whole bunch of new friends and you see them giving stuff away, that's a problem because that's harmful.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of things that you have to watch out for. And if you can get them to talk to somebody like myself, as an elder law attorney, or anybody, a doctor, somebody that has their best interest, and we're in a conversation so that we can at least delve into what they're thinking, what they're talking about. And sometimes that helps, because again, sometimes it's just a meeting of the minds between the kid and the parent, and sometimes we can't get that meeting of the mind with them. There's too much aggravation. But unfortunately it's a difficult thing, and sorry for the the people in Florida that went through that. I think it happens more often than a lot of us know.
Yeah.
Sometimes those things do go through and then nobody knows about them. That I'm not sure how it came to light, but that's a perfect example of how that could have just went through.
Yeah.
If there was no family members, then they just prospered from their acts and moved on.
They apparently, well, it was the guy's girlfriend turned him and the other girl and the other realtor. Apparently, they had plans to take whatever land this guy had. He had a house and some other property, and they were going to either turn it into condos or a hotel on it. So the 1.6 was just
it was going to.
Not to mention the money out of
exponential.
taking his truck, the whole
it's terrible. I mean,
cards.
Yeah, and that's a situation where if somebody didn't turn them in, it would have just went through because there was nobody to stop it. It probably happens more often than we would like to admit.
You'd hope he got caught his first time out, but no.
Yeah, what's the chances? Hopefully the judicial system will look into something like that. I just don't know how any of it's reversed, but that's really a terrible thing. That's why I really like it when families do reach out and talk to mom and dad and at least get them, even if they can everybody can get on the same page, or the kids can understand that this is what mom or dad or whoever wants to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just have to accept it. They're not putting themselves in harm's way. They're just not doing what you think they should do. That doesn't make it wrong.
When you draw that line,
yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, as parents, we do that. Our kids don't always do what we want them to do,
right?
Yeah, right. But as long as they're not putting themselves in harm's way, It's just might not be the right choice, the right career choice, the right person in their life, whatever. But, we have to sit back and let them be independent. And again, if they're putting themselves in harm's way, then of course you step in. And that kind of shifts to a degree.
Yeah.
But as an adult, as a parent, when your kids are adults, the same thing. You got to walk that fine line. You tell them what to do, they'll never talk to you again. And you get the same thing with parents.
Yeah.
And I have had that, unfortunately, over the years where, there wasn't a relationship between the kids and the parents. And that's a shame.
I think it's a lot of adult kids are a little leery of that. If you push too hard, they push back, and to point where now they're isolated. Right,
and it works. And that's where it works exactly the same way, opposite.
Yeah.
So just because your dad is 80 doesn't mean he's willing to be told what to do all the time.
Usually not.
Right. Maybe he does need it, but you got to do it the same way you would do it as a parent. You find that middle ground of figuring out how to subjectively get them to do it. See it the right way. Sometimes it's not pushing it. Sometimes it's getting them in front of a professional where they can talk it out. Because I've had clients in here where I've had, the conversation with dad, and the kids waited in the other room, and, we talked about it. And then after having the conversation where I could show him, not because I don't have any skin in the game, I don't have any personal opinion of what he's doing, but I can tell him where the downside is of the choices he wants to make.
Right.
And then he can make the choice. Sometimes seeing that from the opposite side, from an independent side, sometimes makes them see that, maybe that's not the best idea.
I think that's an important distinction for people to know that, if you're, 85 and your son's bringing you to the attorney, that doesn't mean the son's in the room the whole time. You can speak privately.
Yeah. Oh, I do. I mean, I most certainly require the kids to go out of the room because, and I have to make sure that the kids understand that, I represent dad.
Yeah.
I can't, because it's a fine line in this area of law. Normally, if you have, let's say you're bringing a lawsuit, and there's a client, if someone else is paying the bill, that's fine. But there's who's the client, and in my case, who's the client? Just because the child brought them here, what's the issue? If the issue is estate planning or Medicaid planning or asset preservation, those kind of things, dad is my client. I mean, I have the same thing when I have a husband and wife. So I have a waiver that they sign. It's like a husband's doing his will, wife's doing her will. Maybe they look different. Maybe it's a second marriage. Maybe it's a third marriage. Maybe they have no kids. Maybe if he's the last one to die, he wants it to go to a church. And if she is the last one to die, she wants the stuff to go to a synagogue. They could have different outcomes at the end. Doesn't necessarily have the same outcomes. But we have to put all that stuff on the table.
Right.
I can't have, the husband whisper to me going, okay, well, I'm going to do this, but don't tell her. No. We're doing, everybody has to know. And it's the same thing with the kids. The kids, even the kid as a power of attorney, he still has to leave the room. I need to know that. And it has happened before where the kid has talked the whole time. Yeah. I have them leave the room, and then mom goes, I don't want to do any of that.
Right.
And it's like, okay, well, what is going on?
Right.
And sometimes it wasn't really that big a thing when I got to the details of it. It was just the daughter was overbearing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And mom wasn't getting a chance to talk.
Yeah.
And I do that. I have, like I said, I have that with a husband and wife. So they won't let the other one talk. Sometimes I'll make them go out of the room. I need to know what we're all talking about here.
Right.
I mean, I'll hear the kids because I like to hear what their concern is and what brought them here, or what got them to make the phone call. But then we still have to talk. I still have to talk to dad.
Yeah.
Because their mom, because it's their planning that we're doing. And that's what we have to do. And sometimes the kids, well, I need you to work on my estate planning. Okay, yeah, well, I can only work on one case at a time. We're going to do dad's. Yeah. And then, I can take you on as a client as long as your planning has no negative effect on him because he's my client. Right. And he'll remain my client, forever.
Right.
So it's a fine line sometimes in this area of law is who's the client, because sometimes the kids, I do get that. I mean, I do get the craziness, and I'm sure you've seen it even dealing with probate estates, where, the kid believes that, they're entitled to something. I get people call me and I'm one of the beneficiaries in the will. Okay. Yeah. Well, that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Because tomorrow dad can write a new will and not leave you anything. There's no, you're not anything. Dad is my client and I can only talk to dad.
I've had that. People ask me, well, how much am I getting? that's out of my pay grade.
Right.
And you got to ask state attorney that one.
Right. And I get that before the person died. How much am I getting?
Right.
I don't know. Problem could be nothing. Make that, excuse me, make dad mad, and he'll change the will. Right? I don't know. And I can't answer any of that because it's that's between
exactly.
my client, because it's attorney client. I wouldn't give up any information.
And that's important to understand that if you want to come, you want your kid to bring you, your adult kid to bring you, you leave the room. You don't tell them necessarily what was said.
I don't tell the kids anything. I can't tell the kids anything. I never do. It's confidential. The kids can talk all they want. I'm good at listening.
Yeah.
But I don't give them. I can talk general how systems work, but I can't talk about what dad had said.
Right.
That's between them.
Right.
Because sometimes I have people say, okay, well, do you should we tell the kids what what the will says? You can tell the kids. It's up to you. I mean, it doesn't affect me. Yeah, my concern is that you put your documents where the executor can find them, where the power of attorney can find them if they're needed. Right. The healthcare power of attorney can find them. That's I want them secure, and then they get them. If they don't know what it says in there until afterwards,
right,
that's fine. Right. But you don't name somebody as the power of attorney, but not tell them. They wouldn't know that they wouldn't know that they have to act.
And so they want it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's you always wanted that kind of stuff too. Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into that. So I use the example all the time is that I don't do a will. You don't call me to do a will. I do planning.
Right.
And I think that anybody who's dealing with elder law or any kind of estate planning, the word planning is the important part of it. Because if you don't go through the options, the what ifs, doesn't have to be specific from my perspective when somebody comes in, unless we're really getting into asset values and tax implications, stuff like that. But if we're just talking about, okay, when I die, I want my stuff to go somewhere. Okay, well, what stuff do you have? And I don't care about the numbers. I care about, I have an IRA. Okay, do you have a beneficiary on the IRA?
Right.
Well, who's the beneficiary? I don't know. Well, you need to know. Yeah. Because it doesn't matter what your will says. I have a piece of property. This is my house. Okay, do you own it yourself? You have a mortgage. No, I don't have a mortgage. Okay, you're the only one on the deed. And then sometimes it comes up, well, I added my one son to the deed because, I Googled and it said that I could avoid probate.
Right.
Yeah, but you told me you wanted to leave everything to your 3 kids evenly. Your one kid's going to get the house. Oh, you know what? Tommy's great. He'll split it with his brothers. Okay.
Right.
I don't know if that's what's going to happen. I do know that legally the brothers don't really have any way of making them do that.
Yeah.
So if you're okay with it, that's up to you. But we have to talk about those things. So it's important to have those issues because otherwise that's what happens is all of a sudden, they go and probate the will and the kids think that, everything's going to be 3 ways. That's what dad said. Yet only Tommy's as the beneficiary on all the financial vehicles and all the deeds, and Tommy gets everything and the other 2 get nothing.
And it might not be Tommy anymore. It may be Tommy maybe incapacitated and somebody is handling Tommy's estate.
That's right. That's those issues. All kinds of things can come up. Yeah. And Tommy's now the joint owner on the house, and Tommy goes through a divorce, and now that's an asset. Or Tommy gets sued, and now, or God forbid, Tommy dies. Now all of a sudden, Dad's paying inheritance tax. I've got to explain to Dad that he got to pay inheritance tax on his own house, 50% of the value of his own house, because the joint owner was his son and he died. Right. And it's like, I didn't understand. It's because again, they didn't do any planning.
Right. They use Google as their attorney.
Exactly. Friend said this, or someone told them this, or someone told them that. I believe in my experience is that, they can Google a lot of this stuff, or they can get all this information from other people, and all the information might all be correct. I'm not saying any of it's incorrect. It just might not be applied to them.
Right.
So all of a sudden they're trying to make a fact, and they're trying to squeeze it into their fact pattern. They're trying to get this answer into their fact pattern. It doesn't work that way. It actually, takes them in the wrong direction of the plan that they really, in their mind, really wanted to accomplish. So it's a point of doing the planning. So it's the same thing. Get your parents taken care of so that you as the kids don't have to deal with any of that. And then after that's all done, think about getting yourself organized so you don't do that to your kids.
Yeah.
You know, and that's a really important part of all this, because things do happen. People are living older, like I said. So I'm dealing a lot more with nursing home, and of course, I get it. No one's going to the nursing home. Exactly. Everybody says that. It's not. No one's going. And yes, and the assisted livings and nursing homes are filled with people that all said the same thing.
Exactly.
And I agree with you. It's not. That's not the plan. We don't plan for that. No. The issue is what happens if that happens. Because of health reasons, financial reasons, usually a combination of both. Right. And that's the situation. Now, how do we deal with it? That's fine. Hopefully it doesn't happen. I have a giant caseload of people that it happened to. Yeah. But you have to plan for it.
Boxers and attorneys, all those people who.
Right. And that's it. Because I don't know any elder law attorney like myself that, has people planning for the nursing home. That's not. I've never had any independent person planning for the nursing home. Yeah. The only ones that plan for the nursing home are the ones that get those diagnoses. Mm-hmm. They get the Parkinson's and the dementia diagnosis, and it's starting. Yes, they're not ready for it now, but the expectation is this is a progressive disease that's going to put them in a situation where they're not manageable at home in their expectation. Right. So what are our choices? So then they plan for it, but that's not part of the plan at the end of the day. The issue is, you plan for, okay, if I do get sick, who can speak for me? Mm-hmm. If I do get sick and I need help with my financials, who can speak for me? Right. And when I pass away, because that's not an if. When I pass away, where's my stuff go? Yeah. That's the planning. We got to plan for that and have all those things in order. Yep. And again, hopefully, no unscrupulous person slides in and steals things along the way. Yeah. That's a sad part of society.
Hmm. Well, if you need to get a hold of attorney Scott Bloom at 855-922-6337, check out that paper, the report we have for you. The link will be underneath this video. So if you have any questions, always feel free to give us a call. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. Take care.
Good job.